The call that changed everything. It was just another regular Tuesday, the kind where the hours crawl slower than a snail uphill. I was in my office, sipping lukewarm coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, eyes glued to a spreadsheet I had already reviewed 3 times. The hum of the ceiling fan above buzzed like a lazy fly, and my inbox blinked with unopened messages I wasn't ready to face. That's when my phone buzzed on the desk. A name popped up that made me blink. Malik. My brother and I weren't exactly the kind who called just to catch up. He lived out in Hawaii, running one of those jaw-droppingly expensive resorts tourists fly thousands of miles to photograph. Our conversations were rare, usually reserved for birthdays and the occasional holiday check-in. So a random call from him in the middle of the day? It wasn't normal. I picked up, already expecting something odd. "Hey, little bro," he said, casual as always. "What's up, Malik?" I leaned back in my chair, waiting. There was a pause. "Quick question. Where's your wife?" I blinked. "She's on a business trip," I answered slowly. "In New York. She left Sunday." "Why?" Another pause, longer this time. "You sure about that?" Something in his voice shifted. No longer casual. "Not joking." "Why do you ask?" I said, my voice tightening. "Because," he sighed, "I'm standing in the lobby of the resort right now. And I swear on Mom's good name, your wife is right in front of me. She just checked in. With another man." The room fell silent. I thought I misheard him. "What?" "She's here," Malik said again, lowering his voice. "Barefoot in a sundress. With a guy who looks like he belongs on a cologne ad. And she just paid for the honeymoon suite using your ATM card." I didn't breathe for a moment. My hand froze on the mouse. The coffee suddenly tasted like sand in my mouth. I stared at the monitor, but the spreadsheet no longer made sense. My ears rang. My jaw clenched. But somehow, I kept my voice steady. "Are you sure it's her?" "Positive," he replied. I waved at her. She waved back. The silence stretched again. I rubbed my temple, trying to push away the pounding headache that had just formed behind my eyes. "All right," I said slowly. "Don't say anything else to her. Don't let her know you told me." "You got it," Malik said. "What do you want me to do?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was racing, but my mind was already shifting into something colder. I stood from my desk and walked to the window, watching the wind rustle the trees outside. My thoughts were a storm. Brielle, my wife of 6 years. I met her at a work seminar back when we were still nobodies. She was electric, sharp, confident, the kind of woman who didn't wait for doors to open. She kicked them down. We got along instantly. I paid for her last semester of grad school when her loan got denied. Supported her while she built her startup from scratch. Celebrated her wins like they were my own. And now, she was thousands of miles away, wrapped around another man on a beach, smiling like none of that mattered. I ended the call with Malik after a few more instructions, and I sat down heavily in my chair. I opened our banking app. The transaction history stared back at me like an accusation. $850, Ocean View room. $170, champagne brunch. $265, luxury couples massage. $320, catamaran sunset cruise. $2,430, total stolen joy. Each charge was a stab to the chest. Paid with my card. For the past few months, I'd felt something was off. She had started canceling date nights. Always tired. Overwhelmed at work. She'd pull away when I reached out. Dodge conversations with vague excuses. I chalked it up to stress. I didn't press. I gave her space. Turns out, I gave her room to cheat. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to throw something across the room, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there. Quiet. Numb. Processing. Because in that moment, I realized something dangerous. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to get even. I wasn't going to burst into Hawaii demanding answers. I wasn't going to storm into her hotel suite and punch the guy in the face. That's what she'd expect. That's what she'd prepare for. But me? I was going to sit down. Think. Plan. By the time she realized what was happening, she wouldn't even know what hit her. I picked up the phone again. Called Malik back. "Keep watching," I said. "Tell me everything. And send photos if you can without getting caught." He agreed. He always liked a little drama, and for once, we were on the same team. Then I called my assistant and said I wouldn't be in the office the rest of the week. I closed my laptop. I poured a glass of whiskey, sat on the couch, and stared at our wedding photo above the fireplace. I remembered the way she smiled that day, the vows she made, how her voice cracked when she said forever. I should have known then. Some people say forever, but they mean until the next shiny thing comes along. I clinked the glass against my teeth. She thought I was a fool, that I'd never find out. But she forgot who I am. She forgot that I pay attention, that I see patterns, that I built my life on structure and precision. She played a careless game in paradise. And now? Now, I was about to show her that betrayal has consequences. And Hawaii was about to become the last place she'd ever forget. Paradise exposed. The funny thing about betrayal is how it doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in like cold water under a door, slow at first, then soaking everything before you realize you're standing in a flood. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, letting it all soak in. The only sound was the clink of ice against glass and the slow creak of the ceiling fan above. I stared at the bank statements again, scrolling through the damage like it was a crime scene report. A couple spa package. Sunset cruise. Room service that could feed a football team. My name on every receipt, my money funding their fantasy. She had taken what we built and used it as a getaway fund for a fling. But I wasn't going to act rash. Not yet. Instead, I called Malik again. Describe him to me, I said, pouring another drink. He chuckled, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Tall, model-looking. You know the type. Skinny jeans and loafers on a beach, like he's allergic to sand. She kissed him on the cheek earlier. Held his hand. They looked too comfortable to be coworkers. I closed my eyes. He wasn't wrong. I already knew in my gut it wasn't business. Her emails had become vague lately. No more, be back Wednesday, or client meeting at 3. Just one-word replies or ghost-like silence. I told myself she was stressed, that she needed space. I gave her that, and she took it all the way to Hawaii. Thanks, man, I said. Keep an eye on her. Don't let her know you've said anything. Already on it, Malik replied. She booked the stay under your full name, by the way. No shame at all. Of course she did. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a while. I thought about everything. The way she used to wait up for me when I worked late. The way she used to laugh at my terrible jokes. Somewhere along the line, that laughter had faded, and I didn't know when it happened. Or maybe I just didn't want to notice. The idea of confronting her right then burned through my chest like acid. I imagined flying down to Hawaii, bursting into their suite, catching them red-handed. But then I pictured her reaction. She'd probably gasp, cry, beg, deny, maybe even twist the narrative and say I invaded her privacy. Turn it into a story about how I didn't trust her. The victim would become the villain. No, I needed her to be exposed. But not just to me, to everyone. That meant no yelling, no throwing things, no drama, just facts. I pulled up my shared folder from our bank. Every transaction lit up like a breadcrumb trail. I made a new spreadsheet because I needed this to be organized. Cold, surgical. I labeled each entry by date, location, description, and amount. It wasn't hard to tell what was hers. She loved extravagant little things. Candlelit dinners, imported wine, spa facials with names that sounded like they belonged in science fiction movies. And the worst part? It was all billed from my side of the account. I felt like a ghost watching my life from outside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen island, lit only by the fridge light, drafting a plan. I wasn't going to let her leave Hawaii with a tan and a smile. She'd arrive with betrayal and return with a legal storm. The next morning, I texted Malik, "Can you stall her tomorrow morning? Tell her she's been upgraded or some VIP beach experience. Just buy me time." He replied a few seconds later, "Easy. Consider it done. You cooking something up?" "Yeah," I texted. "I'm done being quiet." Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Joan. She and I went to college together, and she was the kind of person who could hack into a vending machine and get it to give free snacks for a week. Now, she was a cybersecurity consultant for a law firm and freelanced on the side. When I explained what I needed, she didn't even flinch. "I'll send you a tracker that links to a live purchase log," she said. "Give me access to the joint account, and I'll feed everything into a private sheet. Can you match it to GPS locations?" I asked. She laughed. "You want time, place, and context? You got it. I'll have it by tonight." "Thanks, Joan. I'll make it worth your time." "You already have," she said. "I love a good revenge story." I hung up, and for the first time in hours, I smiled. Because now it wasn't just about the heartbreak. It was about reclaiming control. I texted Malik again, "Send me a picture." Just one. An hour later, a photo came through. The two of them standing near the beach bar. She was holding a coconut drink with a pink umbrella. Her hair was down, those expensive sunglasses perched on her head, and her hand, resting gently on his chest. I zoomed in. No guilt, no shame, just smiles. That's when something inside me snapped into place. The man I had been, trusting, loyal, maybe a little too forgiving. He was gone. The man who stood in his place? He was calculating, focused. I saved the photo and added it to a folder on my laptop labeled Paradise Files. Next, I started gathering copies of all her recent emails and texts. She'd sent the travel confirmation from her work address to his personal one and carelessly CC'd herself. I pulled every digital receipt, every itinerary, every piece of proof. Then I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I needed someone licensed in Hawaii. Malik gave me a name, Tony. Civil attorney, sharp as glass, known for taking down big players with nothing but a folder and a raised eyebrow. I emailed her my evidence. 30 minutes later, we were on a Zoom call. I don't just want a divorce, I told her. I want a financial claim. Fraudulent use of funds. And I want her served while she's still in Hawaii. Tony raised an eyebrow. You're not messing around. Not anymore, I said. She nodded. Send everything. I'll draft a claim. When do you land? I hesitated. I haven't booked the flight yet. Well, she smiled. You'd better hurry. Paradise doesn't stay quiet forever. And with that, I closed the laptop, leaned back, and looked at the photo one more time. Brielle thought she was living her best life. But she had no idea I was about to turn her paradise into a courtroom. I wasn't just exposing her. I was preparing to bury the fantasy, publicly, legally, and with precision. And I would be watching every moment of it unfold. My brother, my ally. Growing up, Malik and I were never exactly best friends. We were just two boys under one roof, with different minds and different paths. He liked beaches and breezes. I liked books and balance sheets. While I stayed on the mainland, building a quiet life, he went off to Hawaii and turned a crumbling beachfront property into a luxury resort that made headlines. We didn't fight, but we didn't bond either. At least not until now. Betrayal has a strange way of rearranging loyalties. It was 2 days after Malik's call. I was sitting in my car, parked at the edge of a cliffside overlook just outside the city. The kind of place where you go to think, or maybe to scream when no one's around. I had the ocean in the distance, cold, gray, unforgiving, and my phone glowing in my palm. All right, Malik said on the other end. Here's what I got. He had gone full investigator on my behalf. The kind of effort you only make when blood actually means something. Reservation details are all under your name, he began. She booked the honeymoon suite for 6 nights. Confirmed through your shared bank card. All-inclusive. Champagne welcome. Turn-down service. Ocean view. I closed my eyes. Send me the documents. Already in your inbox, he said. And I've pulled security footage too. Discreet angles. Nothing invasive, but enough to show they're not just coworkers. You sure? I asked, jaw tight. Trust me, he said flatly. She's not talking business. They're kissing by the pool bar. Arms around each other. I even saw them dancing last night at the luau. A knot twisted in my stomach. She ever say anything to you? I asked, wondering if she tried to lie to his face. Nope. Just smiled like everything was fine. Didn't even flinch when I greeted her. She said she was just taking a break from work stress. I didn't let on. Good. And him? I asked. What's his story? Malik exhaled through the speaker. Name's Levi. I asked a few staff members to poke around. Turns out he's some kind of marketing manager at a firm in California. Mid-30s. Works out a lot. Acts like he's God's gift to women. Perfect, I muttered. The cliché of clichés. You want me to do more digging? No, I said. I've got someone else helping on that front. Because I did. Joan. She'd already sent me a Google sheet, color-coded, organized, time-stamped, with every purchase Brielle made using our joint account since she landed. Even GPS coordinates were included, pinged from the stores and restaurants she visited. It read like a travel brochure from hell, and every entry had my name on it. My next move was to tighten the circle. I needed more than emotional damage. I needed legal ground. So I called Joan again. Hey, she said, picking up on the second ring. Your sheet's updated. You should take a look at row 35. I opened it. Item, boutique jewelry set. Amount, $860. Note, gift wrapped, signed to my future, handwriting confirmed to match Brielle. My hands tightened around the phone. She used my card to buy him a gift? Joan didn't answer. She didn't have to. Keep tracking, I said. I want every dollar mapped out. I want a full timeline. I want to know what they touched, where they stayed, what they wore. You're getting dangerous, she said, half amused, half impressed. No, I replied. I'm getting smart. After hanging up, I contacted Tony, the civil attorney Malik had recommended. She was sharp, fast, and completely unbothered by the scale of the drama. I've reviewed the files you sent, she said during our second call. I can easily build a claim here. Fraudulent use of joint funds, emotional distress, misrepresentation. If you want to press charges or serve her papers while she's still on the island, I can help you file the paperwork within 48 hours. Make it happen. Just be aware, she said carefully, this could go public. I don't care. That night, Malik emailed me the video clips. The first one started with soft music playing in the background, one of the resort's live bands. The camera angle showed Brielle and Levi swaying together under string lights, his hands on her waist. She leaned in, whispered something in his ear. He laughed, and then she kissed him, right there, on the dance floor. The same floor where I once danced with her during a retreat Malik hosted 3 years ago. Back when she still reached for my hand in public. Back when she still looked at me like I mattered. I closed the video, not out of pain, but out of certainty. I was done being blindsided. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was business. She turned our marriage into a transaction. So I would treat the fallout like a contract gone wrong. Anything else you need? Malik asked when I called to check in again. I need access to her suite, I said. Not to break in. Just gather intel. He hesitated. That's a gray area. She left the door open when she used my name and my card. I have a right to know what's happening under my account. I might have a guy, he said slowly. His name's Kai. Been with me 6 years. Discreet. Loyal. I trust him. Send him in. Quietly. Don't take anything. Just eyes. You got it. As the plan started to take shape, I began drafting a master document. I titled it Operation Island Exit. It included bank statements, email screenshots, timeline of lies, photos and videos from Malik, spreadsheet from Joan, drafted legal complaint from Tony. All of it stacked neatly into a folder I kept on an encrypted drive. The evidence was clear. The betrayal was proven. But still, I hadn't called her. She had no idea what was coming. That silence? It was my favorite part. Because there's something powerful about letting someone walk deeper into the fire, believing they're in the sun. They sip champagne, post beach photos, smile in the mirror. And all the while, the ground beneath them is starting to crack. By the end of the week, it wouldn't be a beach beneath her feet. It would be a courtroom. The setup. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a liar smile while walking straight into a trap. And in this case, the trap came with ocean views and complimentary mimosas. I landed in Honolulu just before noon on a Friday, stepping off the plane with a single carry-on, dark sunglasses, and a name that wasn't mine. I booked my hotel under an alias, Mr. Hayes, a name I used once for an old fantasy football league. It felt ironic now. That identity, unlike my marriage, was still intact. I didn't stay at Malik's resort. That would have been reckless. Instead, I checked into a boutique hotel just a few blocks away, one of those eco-luxury places where no one asks questions as long as you tip well and look tired. I kept to myself. No loud calls. No public scenes. Just observation, coordination, and silence. Malik met me later that evening at a small cafe near the marina. He wore flip-flops and a linen shirt, blending in with the tourists. Me? I still hadn't changed out of my travel clothes. I wasn't here to relax. She's still playing the perfect guest, Malik said, sipping his drink. She booked a couple's kayak tour for tomorrow morning. With him? I asked. He nodded. And they added a spa session for 2 in the afternoon. She's using the card like it prints money. She doesn't suspect a thing? Not a hint. She's floating. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the docked boats. The setting sun bounced off the water like liquid fire. It should have been romantic. Instead, it felt like a countdown. All right, I said. Let's move forward. Introduce me to your attorney friend. The next morning, Malik set up a quiet meeting with Tony Rivera, a civil attorney whose office overlooked the edge of Diamond Head. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a confidence that made it clear she didn't lose often. I've reviewed the documentation, she said, gesturing to the thick folder I'd provided. You've got solid grounds, financial misconduct, fraudulent use of joint funds, and emotional distress. More importantly, We can file here, But if you wanted to hit harder, we wait until she's mid-trip. Let her think everything's perfect, then drop the hammer. I nodded. Make her feel untouchable. Then remind her she's not. Tony smiled. My kind of client. That afternoon, I returned to my hotel and reviewed the latest batch of updates from Joan. The spreadsheet had grown. More dinners, jewelry, a private snorkel tour. One transaction labeled Lover's Cove Picnic Basket Premium. That one stung. Not because of the money, but because we'd done that same picnic 2 years ago. It had been her idea then. Now, it was recycled romance for someone else. I closed the laptop and called Malik. Time for the next phase, I said. Card switch, he asked. Yes. Can Kai handle it? Kai was Malik's right-hand man. Quiet, unshakable, the kind of guy you could trust to carry secrets to the grave. Malik once said Kai had fixed a blackout during a hurricane with duct tape and a screwdriver. I'll brief him tonight, Malik replied. We'll do it tomorrow morning when she comes down for breakfast. Tell him to be fast. Clean. No errors. The plan was simple. Malik would stage a billing issue at the front desk that required Brielle's physical presence. Something like a hold error on the room. While she was down arguing, Kai would enter the suite, swap her real ATM card with an identical dummy, and leave everything else untouched. When she tried to use it later that day, nothing would work. Her picture-perfect vacation would collapse by degrees, each swipe a reminder that control was slipping. By the time the sun rose, everything was in motion. Malik called me around 10 a.m. She's at the desk now, he whispered, giving my staff the fake smile. Is Kai in? Already in and out. Like a ghost. I grinned. Perfect. Later that afternoon, Joan messaged me. No activity on the real card since 10:13 a.m. Looks like the decoy's in full effect. That was the moment I finally felt the shift. The balance tipping. I imagined her standing at the register of some boutique shop, sunglasses in one hand, disappointment curling her lips as the cashier shook their head. Card declined. Swipe again. Declined. Confusion. Embarrassment. Panic. Malik confirmed it. They went to the jewelry store in Waikiki, he said. She tried to buy a gold chain. Got declined. Tried again. Nothing. Levi looked confused. She looked pissed. And now, they're back at the resort. She's on the phone with someone. Probably the bank. Or maybe you. I chuckled. Let her call. I didn't answer, of course. I wasn't ready yet. She had to sit in it longer. But I wasn't done. I crafted a short message on a white piece of paper and sealed it in an envelope. Then I printed one of the clearest screenshots of her kissing Levi on the beach and added it inside. On the paper, I wrote just one line. Smile. You're not on vacation anymore. I handed it to Malik in the lobby that evening. Deliver this to her tomorrow morning. Hand it to her personally. Say it's from a private guest. Then walk away. He turned the envelope over in his hand. She's gonna lose it. That's the point. That night, I returned to my quiet hotel room. I stood by the window, watching the ocean crash against the rocks, and thought about the man I had been just 1 week ago. Blind, tired, trying to fix something that was already broken. Now, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just making sure the wreckage had my signature on it. The next morning, Malik called me with a chuckle in his voice. She opened it in the breakfast lounge, he said. Went pale like someone kicked the chair out from under her. Levi asked what it was. She told him it was nothing. Then she stormed off to her suite. I smiled, staring at the rising sun outside my window. Good. She's gonna blow soon, Malik added. She already did, I said calmly. She just doesn't know it yet. I ended the call, finished my coffee, and zipped up my suitcase. It was time to go home, not because I was finished, but because the real show was about to begin. And she still had no idea the cameras were rolling. The card switch. There's a specific kind of silence that follows a perfect setup. It's not empty, it's loaded. Like the air right before a storm breaks, or the hush that settles in a courtroom when the verdict is about to be read. That's the silence I sat in the morning after Malik delivered the envelope. A thick, waiting kind of silence. I didn't rush it. I let the clock do the work. At exactly 11:03 a.m., the first call came through. Brielle. I watched her name flash across my screen. I didn't move. Let it ring. Then another. Then another. I muted the phone and slid it face down across the counter. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. I'd imagined this part for days, the unraveling. But nothing compared to the real-time thrill of watching her world sink slowly beneath her feet. She called 6 more times over the next 2 hours. I didn't pick up. Meanwhile, Joan kept feeding me live updates from the card tracker. Or rather, the lack of them. Declined again. She messaged at 12:12 p.m., this time at a beachside cafe. She tried 3 times. The beautiful thing about revenge done right is that it's not loud. It doesn't slam doors or scream accusations. It whispers truth into places where lies used to live. That's what this card switch was. Not revenge in the classic sense, but revelation. One swipe at a time. Malik texted me mid-afternoon. She's asking everyone at the front desk why her card isn't working. She thinks it's a hotel error. Let her. I replied. I imagined her standing there in that overpriced sundress, trying to smile while confusion bloomed across her face. Levi probably standing nearby, arms crossed, wondering what she was hiding. I wondered if he knew the room they were staying in was booked under my name. If you noticed that every time she signed a receipt, it was with a last name she swore she wasn't proud of anymore. But the best was yet to come. I had prepared a second envelope, this one heavier, thicker, stuffed with truth. Inside, I had placed a printed bank statement, with every line highlighted that matched their trip. A spreadsheet compiled by Joan, organized by date, location, and cost. The resort's room booking confirmation, bearing my full name. A divorce petition drafted by Tony. And finally, a neatly labeled USB drive. That USB? It contained the video footage Malik had collected. Their slow dances, hand-holding, laughing under tiki lights, the kiss by the bar, all time-stamped, all in high resolution. This wasn't just evidence, it was a story. A timeline of betrayal, wrapped in facts. And it was about to land directly in her hands. I made one last call to Malik that evening. You sure about this? He asked, though his voice already held the answer. She took a vacation on my dime, I said. She can handle a wake-up call. The next morning, Malik approached her in the hotel lobby, same as before. Mrs. Thorne, he said. I laughed when he told me later she didn't correct him. She was so used to pretending, she forgot to drop the act. This was left for you by a guest, he added, handing her the envelope. She took it without question. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. I didn't answer. Then Malik called. She opened it in the suite, he said. I couldn't see her, but one of the cleaning staff said she threw something against the wall. Then she started shouting. Levi. He left the room 10 minutes later. Looked like someone had slapped him in the face. Did she chase after him? Nope. She slammed the door. He walked down to the pool bar alone. Asked for tequila at 10 a.m. That was almost poetic. I could picture him standing there in his beach shirt, staring out at the waves, suddenly realizing he was just a prop in someone else's mess. That everything she promised him, freedom, love, adventure, was built on stolen money and borrowed names. Later that evening, I got a call from Tony. She's officially been served, she said. Divorce petition, financial claim, and all supporting evidence. We have documentation of receipt. She knows she's been caught. And the lawsuit? Filed. We'll follow up once she returns to the mainland. But based on the footage and your bank records, the case is solid. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast to victory or call friends to brag. I just stood on the balcony of my hotel room, watching the tide roll in, listening to the soft hush of the waves meeting sand. I thought about everything. 6 years of marriage. Countless sacrifices. Quiet nights where I stayed up late finishing her pitch decks. The way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when she couldn't sleep. The little things that build a life. And how, one by one, she tore them down for a man who couldn't even pay for his own cocktails. Somewhere down there, in another hotel suite, she was pacing, panicking, scrambling to call banks, lawyers, anyone who would listen. But the truth? No one could help her now. She betrayed the one person who actually would have stood by her. She mistook kindness for weakness. And when she decided to treat our marriage like a game, she forgot one important thing. I never lose when I know the rules. And now, I was the one writing them. By the next morning, she had checked out. Malik texted me. She left in a rush. Didn't speak to anyone. Levi's gone too. Good, I replied. I boarded my return flight that afternoon. No first class. No upgrades. I didn't need luxury. I had peace. And sometimes, that's more valuable than anything money can buy. I sat by the window, watching the clouds shift outside, feeling lighter than I had in months. There were still battles ahead, court dates, settlements, a property division. But the hardest part was over. She'd seen the truth. She'd tasted what it felt like to be powerless. And she'd know, forever, that the man she tried to deceive wasn't the fool she thought he was. He was the one with the final move. The panic call. It was 5:41 a.m. when my phone rang again. I had just returned home the night before, dropped my bag by the door, and walked straight to the shower without turning on a single light. I needed to rinse off Hawaii. Rinse off the smell of betrayal, the lingering sin of ocean wind and lies. I hadn't even unpacked. The suitcase set untouched by the bedroom wall, and my phone, on silent, buzzed to life on the nightstand. The screen lit up. Brielle. I let it ring. Then again. And again. She called 9 times in less than 20 minutes before I finally picked up. I didn't say a word at first. I just let the weight of the silence reach her through the line. Hello, she said, voice small. I stayed quiet. Where are you? She asked, sounding like she hadn't slept. I finally spoke, my voice calm, even. Back home. There was a pause on her end. I could hear background noise, doors closing, maybe footsteps. She was probably pacing. You're home, she repeated. Why? What's going on? I could almost hear her trying to piece it together, but nothing she'd prepared would have fit what she was walking into. Why is my card not working? She demanded, her voice rising with desperation. Why did it get declined at every store yesterday? I called the bank, and they said there was a freeze on it. Did you do something? Did I do something? I repeated slowly. That's rich. Listen, she began quickly, this whole thing. I know how it looks, but it's not. Don't, I interrupted. She went quiet. I stood at the window of my house, looking out at the neighborhood just beginning to stir. Sprinklers ticked on across lawns. Early joggers passed by with earbuds in, completely unaware that on this call, a marriage was being dissected piece by piece. You told me you were in New York, I said plainly. You packed a suitcase and kissed me goodbye and said you were meeting a client uptown. I was, she lied. You weren't, I said. You were in Hawaii, at my brother's resort, with another man. I heard her inhale sharply. And you used my card, I continued, my voice still low, still cold. Every cocktail, every massage, every dinner, every room service bill, you swiped with my name. You made reservations in my name. You laid in bed with another man, in a suite I paid for. Wait, she said, stumbling over her words. It's not like that. Don't lie again, Brielle. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she snapped, desperation cracking her voice now. It was a mistake. It just happened. You planned the trip. There was silence. You bought the tickets. You forwarded the itinerary to him. You used my funds to do it. That's not a mistake, Brielle. That's a choice. I let that hang in the air. She didn't respond. You don't understand, she finally whispered. I've been feeling lost, alone. You've been distant. You've been working so much. No, I cut in. Don't do that. Don't blame my job. Don't act like loneliness is a permission slip for betrayal. You could have talked to me. You could have told me something wasn't right. Instead, you packed a bag, smiled in my face, and flew to paradise to play house with someone else. There was no defense. She knew it. Her voice broke. Please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just got complicated. I was confused. You weren't confused when you booked a luxury suite. You weren't confused when you bought him a necklace with my card. She gasped. How do you know that? I know everything, I said. Every charge. Every location. Every video. Every lie. She was completely silent now. You really thought you'd get away with it? I asked. You thought I'd sit here while you dipped into our account and took a vacation with someone else? She stammered. I needed something different. I didn't plan on hurting you, I swear. I still love you. I almost laughed. No, Brielle, I said. You love what I gave you. The stability. The money. The image. You loved the version of me that didn't know what you were doing. She cried then. Quietly. I didn't interrupt. I didn't comfort. I don't know what to do, she said between sobs. I made a mistake. You'll get a package by 9 a.m., I said calmly. What? In your suite. Courtesy of the hotel manager. Open it. Read everything inside. Then pack your things and check out. You'll be flying home alone. She sniffled. What's in it? Reality, I said. Something you've been avoiding. I can fix this, she pleaded. Please. I know I hurt you, but I'll do anything. Just tell me how to make this right. You can't, I said. This isn't about hurt anymore. It's about who you chose to be when you thought I wasn't watching. But I didn't mean to fall for him, she whispered. And there it was. The truth. I didn't even flinch. Brielle, I said slowly. You chose him. You booked the flight. You packed the bags. You shared the bed. You used my card to fund the fantasy. That's not something that just happens. That's effort. That's intention. Silence. And then the smallest voice I had ever heard from her. I'm scared. You should be. The line was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing. Maybe she thought I'd soften. Maybe she thought I'd say, come home, or we'll figure this out. But I'd figured it out already. And she no longer had a place in it. I have to go, I said. Wait. But I hung up. I stood in the quiet of the house for a long while after that. The walls felt a little wider. The air, a little clearer. Like the house had been holding its breath too, and now it was free to exhale. I went downstairs, brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and took it out onto the porch. The sky was turning gold. Birds chirped in the trees. For the first time in a long time, I felt still. No more guessing. No more wondering. Just truth. I didn't need to yell or scream to win. All I had to do was stop pretending she was someone she never intended to be. And soon, when she opened that package, she'd realize just how much pretending had cost her. The envelope of consequences. The sun rose in Honolulu like it always did, calm, golden, promising. But for Brielle, this morning was going to be different. I imagined her waking up in the luxury suite, the ocean breeze slipping through the curtains, the faint sound of waves in the distance. For a moment, maybe she even forgot everything. Maybe she reached for Levi. Maybe she still hoped this was just a bad dream. But dreams don't come with documents. At exactly 9 a.m., Malik followed through on our agreement. He walked up to the suite, knocked twice, and handed her a second envelope, this one thicker than the last. He didn't say a word, just smiled politely, turned around, and walked away. Inside that envelope was the end of everything she thought she had control over. The divorce petition was printed on crisp, white paper with bold lettering and Tony's law firm's insignia at the top. It detailed every violation of trust, every financial abuse, every legal reason I had for terminating the marriage. No fluff, just facts. Alongside that, I had included a formal restraining order against her access to all joint accounts, investments, and property titles. Tony's team had frozen everything. The house, the cars, the business assets. Brielle now had no access to anything we had built together. Also included was a breakdown, a full spreadsheet, color-coded, labeled, with every single dollar she had spent using my name. There were receipts from the resort, restaurants, designer stores, and even gas stations. Each row was a nail in the coffin. Joan had done an exceptional job organizing it all, and it looked less like a document and more like a prosecution case file. But what truly mattered, the thing that would take her breath away, was the final item in the envelope. A small black USB drive, neatly labeled. Inside that USB was the footage. For separate clips, each captured with date and timestamps from Malik's security system. There was no ambiguity, no grainy, low-resolution blur to dispute. The kiss under the tiki lights, the hand on her thigh at the poolside lounge, the giggling as she leaned on Levi during the luau, the way she leaned into his neck as they walked back to the suite at night. It was all there. And he, Levi, was just as exposed. That's the part she hadn't thought through. He worked for a firm in San Diego. Brielle once told me it was conservative, uptight, known for firing employees over office romances and inappropriate social behavior. She never thought I'd find out. Never thought Malik would track the footage. Never imagined I'd take it this far. But I had. Because love wasn't the point anymore. Dignity was. I got a call from Malik about 30 minutes after he delivered the envelope. You're not going to believe what just happened, he said, half laughing. Try me, I replied. She came down to the lobby in a fury, holding the envelope like it had bitten her. Demanded to speak to management. Then she demanded to speak to me. And I asked. I met her outside the main doors, he said. She started yelling, asking if I was working with you. She said it was invasion of privacy. I let her talk. Smart. Then Levi came out. He looked shaken. I think he saw the video. I leaned back in my chair. He knows. Oh, yeah. His face said it all. He wasn't furious. He was terrified. Probably realized the kind of fallout he's about to walk into. Good. They argued right there, in front of everyone, Malik said. She said something about fixing it. He said something about lawyers. Then he just walked off. Didn't even wait for her. That part didn't surprise. She had traded 6 years of real for 6 days of illusion. And now she was left holding an envelope full of truths and a name no one wanted to be associated with. Later that day, I received an email from Tony's assistant. Everything had been filed. The claims were active. The documents had been notarized and verified. I now had legal separation pending trial and a strong financial misconduct case. And the startup I helped Brielle launch? I had already removed her from the accounts. Back when we set up the LLC, she didn't pay attention to the fine print. I had retained majority control with 60% equity, standard protection in case she ever wanted to sell early. I never thought I'd use it this way, but now it felt like insurance. I sent a notice of removal to her business email that evening. Effective immediately, she was out. No longer CEO, no longer partner, no longer tied to anything I built. The final blow came when Malik told me Levi's company had received a forwarded copy of the video. Not by me, of course not. But someone anonymous, someone who simply labeled the email, thought your HR department might want to see this. I didn't have to ask who sent it. Joan. She always did have a flair for timing. By that night, the fallout was in full swing. I stayed up reading a book I'd been trying to finish for months. Something about quiet resilience and rebuilding after a storm. Funny how I understood it better now. My phone buzzed once more. A text from an unknown number. Please. Can we talk? Just once. Please. I didn't respond. Because what was there left to say? She had poured gasoline on our life and lit the match, thinking I wouldn't notice the smoke. But now, she was choking on the fumes. She had lied to my face, spent my money, kissed another man under my brother's roof, and thought all she had to do was cry her way out of it. Not this time. I walked out onto the balcony, breathing in the cool night air, letting it settle in my lungs. There was no need for revenge anymore. I'd already won. Not through rage. Not through violence. Through evidence. Through calm. Through the truth. Let people call me cold. Let them say I overreacted. Because in the end, she tried to write me out of the story we built together. But I held the pen, and she just got edited out. Grounded and exposed. When I stepped off the plane back home, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry either. What I felt, oddly enough, was quiet. A kind of stillness that settled in my chest like dust after a storm. I wasn't coming home from a war. I was coming home from a revelation. And the man who had left just a week ago wasn't the same man walking into this house now. I took my time walking through the front door. Everything was exactly as I left it. The shoes neatly by the door. The vase with dried lavender still sitting untouched on the dining table. But the energy had changed. It was no longer our house. It was mine. Completely, irrevocably mine. Before I even unpacked, I did what needed to be done. First, I changed the locks. A locksmith came within the hour. I didn't explain why. I didn't need to. The man simply did the job, took the payment, and nodded before leaving me standing with a brand new set of keys and a fresh bolt on the past. Next, I contacted my bank and finalized the financial separation. Our joint accounts were already frozen, thanks to Tony, but now I made it permanent. No more access. No more loopholes. Every dime was accounted for, every transaction traced. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was securing peace. Then I cleared the house. Not of furniture or memories, just of her. Everything that belonged to Brielle, her clothes, shoes, makeup, books, favorite mugs, even her yoga mat, I boxed up and stored in the garage. I didn't throw anything out. That would have been too easy. Instead, I put it all neatly into labeled bins, and I left a simple note on top. Collected. Categorized. Claimed. You can coordinate pickup through your attorney. I didn't need her setting foot back inside. She had already stomped enough mud through the floorboards of my trust. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. It was a courier with a stack of papers, signed responses from her legal team. She wasn't fighting the divorce. Not directly. Not yet. But the tone of the reply was careful, curated, designed to slow things down. Too late for that. The next morning, she flew back. Alone. Malik had texted me the moment she checked out. She's leaving today. First class. No Levi. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But I knew the storm was about to move from Hawaii to here. Sure enough, by mid-afternoon, there she was, standing at the front door like someone who forgot they no longer lived here. She had sunglasses on, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, and that same duffel bag she'd taken to Hawaii slung over her shoulder like nothing had changed. She rang the bell twice. I watched her from the upstairs hallway monitor. I didn't rush. I let her stand there. Let her feel the weight of waiting. Then I pressed the intercom button. Brielle. She looked around, confused. Can you open the door? This property is no longer shared, I said evenly. You'll receive further instructions through your attorney. Her face changed immediately. Wait, what? Are you serious right now? I flew back to fix this. You flew back alone, I said. That was your first clue. She stepped closer to the door. Please, just let me in. We can talk. There's nothing to talk about. Come on, you don't mean that. You said you needed space. You took it. In Hawaii. With another man. That was a mistake. No, I interrupted. It was a pattern. I paused. You broke this, Brielle. Not just once. Not just with one kiss. You made a decision every single day of that trip. And now, you're facing the cost. She was visibly shaking. People make mistakes. People do, I agreed. But not everyone betrays the person who gave them everything. The silence that followed was heavy. Then her voice cracked. The neighbors are staring. I looked down from the window. Sure enough, across the street, old Mrs. Callahan had paused mid-sprinkler. A man jogging with his dog slowed to glance over. Even the mailman took a second look before heading back to his van. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed, I said. You made this public the moment you tried to hide it. Her lips trembled. You really hate me now, don't you? No, I replied. Hate takes too much energy. And I'm done giving you mine. I ended the intercom call. She stood there for another 30 seconds. Then she walked to the curb, where her Uber was still waiting, and climbed in without looking back. That evening, her parents called. I debated whether to answer. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said. There was a moment of hesitation. Hi, her mother said, her voice tightly wound. We heard about everything. We just wanted to hear your side. You want my side? Yes, her father added. Brielle's upset. She says it wasn't what it looked like. It never is, I said. Well? She went to Hawaii with another man. She used my bank card. She booked the suite under my name. She lied to all of us. If you're looking for someone to feel sorry for, I'm not him. There was a long silence. I'm sorry, her mother said finally. We didn't know. No, I replied. You just didn't ask. I hung up. I didn't owe them closure. Not when they'd spent 6 years turning a blind eye to the cracks she caused and calling them character. That night, I sat on the back patio with a glass of water and watched the sky turn orange. The same sky we used to sit under together, laughing at silly TV shows and dreaming about our future. Now, I sat under it alone, and for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The house was no longer filled with tension. No walking on eggshells. No late-night text I wasn't supposed to see. No phone calls that ended the second I stepped into the room. Just silence. And silence, when it's finally honest, is the loudest kind of peace. I walked back inside, past the row of labeled boxes in the garage, and shut the door behind me. She had returned home thinking she could fix it with words. But some bridges burned so clean, there's nothing left to walk across. The final confrontation. A month later, I stood in the hallway outside courtroom 4B, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, holding nothing but a leather folder and calm resolve. The hallway buzzed quietly, shuffling feet, muffled conversations, the occasional call for silence. But all of it faded to a dull murmur as I stood by the bench, waiting for her. Brielle arrived 5 minutes late. She looked nothing like the woman who had stepped onto a Hawaiian beach in a sundress and sunglasses. Today, she wore a navy skirt suit, her hair pulled tight into a bun, as heavy with something between regret and stubbornness. Beside her was a sharp-looking attorney with an expensive briefcase and the kind of practiced smirk that only existed in courtrooms and overpriced divorce settlements. She didn't make eye contact. I didn't care. My attorney, Tony, stood beside me with quiet confidence, flipping through documents like she already knew how this would end. When the clerk called our case, we entered the courtroom and sat across from each other at 2 separate tables. The judge was a middle-aged woman with a steel gaze and a reputation for disliking unnecessary drama. Exactly who I'd hoped for. Tony opened with a calm summary of the case: financial misconduct, betrayal of marital trust, fraudulent use of shared assets. She spoke clearly, backed by dates, receipts, bank statements, and video footage we'd submitted into sealed evidence. Brielle's lawyer tried to counter with emotional appeals. Your Honor, he said, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made. But this was not a calculated attempt to harm her husband. This was the result of emotional distance in the marriage. My client felt isolated, neglected, and alone. She acted irrationally, yes, but not maliciously. Brielle lowered her eyes, like the weight of those words was hard to carry. The judge didn't blink. Tony rose smoothly. Your Honor, feeling neglected doesn't justify using your spouse's identity and financial accounts to fund an adulterous vacation. My client has presented proof of premeditation, booking details, duplicate reservations, and video footage showing sustained romantic engagement with another man. This was not spontaneous. This was a pattern. The judge nodded, flipping through the documents. Then she turned to Brielle. Mrs. Thorne, do you deny traveling to Hawaii with another man using your husband's financial information? Brielle looked up, her voice barely audible. No, Your Honor. Do you deny that the room, the meals, and the gifts were charged to your husband's account without his consent? Again, no, Your Honor. Do you deny that during this trip, you portrayed yourself as unmarried on official travel documents submitted to the resort and tour companies? Her attorney tried to speak, but the judge raised a hand. I'd like to hear it from her. Brielle hesitated, then shook her head. I don't deny it. The judge nodded and leaned back in her chair. Thank you. Tony stood again and handed over the final exhibit, my written statement. The judge read it silently for a moment before placing it aside. Then it was my turn. Would you like to say anything? The judge asked. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked slowly to the witness platform. I didn't look at Brielle. Not once. My eyes stayed forward, my voice even. I was married for 6 years to a woman I thought I knew. I supported her through grad school, paid off her debts, helped launch her business. I built our life carefully, brick by brick. And one day, without warning, she took a sledgehammer to all of it and smiled like it was self-care. A few people in the gallery shifted. I continued. She planned a trip with another man. She lied to my face. She used our joint funds, my money, to finance a vacation she called a business trip. She bought jewelry for someone else while pretending to be someone else. She committed financial betrayal and emotional abandonment, all in one act. I paused. And when she got caught, she didn't apologize. She didn't come home and confess. She panicked because the fantasy fell apart. I finally turned my head slightly, just enough to glance at her. You had 6 years to make things work, I said softly. You chose a 5-day trip over a lifetime. I stepped back, nodded to the judge, and returned to my seat. The room was still. The judge adjusted her glasses, glanced at the stack of evidence once more, and gave her ruling. The court finds the evidence overwhelmingly in favor of the petitioner, she said firmly. The divorce is granted effective immediately. The house, bank assets, and startup business will be awarded to the petitioner in full. Additionally, the respondent will be required to repay $7,200 in misused funds, as documented. Brielle's lawyer tried to argue for reduced repayment. The judge cut him off. This is not a trial for emotional debate. The law is clear. Fraud has consequences. Brielle's shoulders sagged. She didn't speak. Outside the courtroom, I waited for a moment near the elevators. Not for her, but because Tony had stepped into the hall to take a call, and I needed to sign one last form. Brielle eventually approached. Alone. I glanced at her. She looked tired. Not the tired of missing sleep, but the tired that comes from carrying a story that finally collapsed. Can I say something? She asked. You just did. In court. She frowned. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I turned toward her fully. That's the problem, I said. You never meant for anything. You just let things happen, until you couldn't hide them anymore. I was confused, she said weakly. No, you were dishonest. I thought maybe after some time. There's no after, Brielle. She looked down, as if expecting that. Her voice was small again. Did you ever love me? I didn't flinch. I did. Completely. And you turned it into paperwork. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't comfort her. That time was gone. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I stepped past her as the elevator dinged. Tony returned, handed me the signed file, and we left. I didn't look back. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine and stood on my balcony again. The wind had picked up. The air had shifted. Somewhere down the road, Brielle would tell her version of the story. Maybe to friends. Maybe to someone new. Maybe even to herself. But I didn't care anymore. Because the story that mattered, the one with the truth, the proof, and the clean break, was finished. I had walked into court with facts and walked out with freedom. No screaming. No slamming doors. No dramatic exits. Just the quiet sound of closure. And the knowledge that I had rebuilt what she tried to tear down, with dignity intact. My life, rewritten. It's funny how peace doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't knock on your door with balloons or announce itself like a grand entrance. It comes quietly, softly, like a breeze drifting through an open window, reminding you that the storm is gone. That's how I felt waking up in my new apartment for the first time. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the hardwood floor. My dog, yes, I finally got one, was curled up at the foot of the bed, snoring softly. He was a rescue, a stubborn little mutt named Milo who liked to hog the blankets and bark at his reflection in the mirror. Somehow, his presence made the space feel lived in, real. Like I wasn't just existing, I was healing. The apartment wasn't big. One bedroom, one office, open kitchen. But everything in it was mine. Every item I brought in had meaning. The framed photos on the shelf were of friends, travels, and family. No wedding pictures. No half-hearted smiles. Just me, in all the honest moments that never required performance. A few weeks after the court hearing, I officially moved out of the house Brielle and I once shared. I didn't fight to keep it, even though the judge had awarded it to me. I didn't want to live in a museum of broken memories. I sold it. Got a good offer, too. Young couple, newly married, excited to start their life together. I let them have it. Let them fill the space with hope instead of history. Brielle didn't contest the sale. She barely said anything after the ruling. And I got back to living. I started biking again on Sundays, the way I used to before I met her. Just me and the wind, riding along the river trails with no destination, no schedule. I found new coffee shops, met neighbors, took cooking classes on Thursday nights because, for the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about someone else's preferences. I didn't check her social media, didn't scroll through tagged photos, trying to see who she was with or what excuse she was giving the world. That chapter was closed. Reading it again wouldn't change the ending. Malik and I talk more now. The whole ordeal had brought us closer than years of birthdays and holidays ever did. We laughed about things now, small details that had once stung. You should have seen her face when the envelope landed, he'd said once over a call. Like someone handed her a live grenade. He came to visit a few weeks later. We grabbed dinner, sat on the rooftop of a local restaurant, and just talked. No tension, no rushed updates. Just two brothers who had been through something ugly and came out stronger for it. "You're different," he said, sipping his beer. "Better or worse?" "Better," he replied. "You look lighter. Like you're finally breathing." I nodded. "Feels that way too." Then there was Tony. What started as a purely professional connection had slowly grown into something I didn't expect. We stayed in touch after the case ended, initially about paperwork, then about life. One evening, we met for drinks at a quiet bar downtown. She looked different out of court, more relaxed, warmer. Her sharpness was still there, but it was softened by genuine curiosity. She asked how I was doing, not in the way people do to be polite, but like she really wanted to know. "I'm learning to be selfish again," I told her. She smiled. "Good. You earned that." By the end of the night, I realized I hadn't thought about Brielle once. Not her lies. Not the videos. Not the voice that once convinced me she'd never hurt me. Just me and the woman sitting across from me, sipping wine and laughing without pretense. It didn't turn into something overnight. I didn't dive into a rebound or force myself into romance. I let it unfold the way healing should: slow, steady, respectful. Maybe it becomes something more. Maybe it doesn't. But for once, I was okay with the uncertainty. One Saturday morning, I visited the place I used to sit with Brielle on our good days, an overlook that faced the city skyline, tucked behind a quiet park. I sat alone on the bench, watching the wind carry leaves across the path. I thought about everything she took from me, and everything I took back. She took my trust. I reclaimed it through boundaries. She took my finances. I rebuilt with intention. She took my dignity. I answered her betrayal with grace, strategy, and silence. People often say that revenge is best served cold, but I disagree. The best revenge is living a life so complete, so unapologetically peaceful, that the person who tried to destroy you ends up haunted by how little they mattered in the long run. Brielle had called me once, weeks after the court decision. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail on Neverly. "You were part of my good karma streak," she said, laughing. "Helping you gave me purpose again." "You saved me," I told her. "No," she replied. "You saved yourself. I just handed you the flashlight." I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. Because she was right. I could have chosen anger. I could have destroyed everything in my path just to feel powerful again. But instead, I chose clarity. I built spreadsheets, not shouting matches. I chose courtrooms, not chaos. I chose dignity when I had every right to explode. And because of that, I didn't just survive the betrayal, I redefined myself through it. Now, when people ask me what happened between us, I don't tell the whole story. I don't list the lies, the expenses, or the beach photos. I just say this. She left thinking she found better. I stayed and found peace. And that's enough. Because I don't owe the world an explanation for how I healed. I only owe myself the truth of what I endured and the pride of how I overcame it. So here I am, 39, divorced, rebuilding, and happier than I ever was in that marriage. Some people chase beaches while burning bridges. Me? I've learned to build on solid ground. No more borrowed trust. No more forced smiles. No more fake forever. Just me, my dog, a skyline view, and the quiet certainty that I will never let someone write me out of my own story again. Not even for paradise. You don't forget the sound of betrayal. It doesn't come like thunder or warning bells. It comes sharp, sudden, like glass breaking inside your chest. That day started like any other. I was in the kitchen, half listening to the radio, swirling a spoon through my coffee while the morning sunlight poured through the window. I had just gotten back from the store with fresh bread and almond milk, Tessa's favorite, and I was humming some old tune without thinking. Life was ordinary. Simple. And then, all at once, it wasn't. I heard the door open, and I figured it was Tessa's sister dropping by again unannounced, like she always did. Alina. She had a way of walking into our home like she paid rent. She barely looked me in the eye most days, which I didn't mind. I tolerated her for my wife's sake. But that morning, she came in with a different kind of energy. Off. Nervous. Wide-eyed. And behind her was Tessa, her face already pinched with tension like she'd just been told someone died. I turned around slowly, coffee cup still warm in my hand, ready to say good morning. But I didn't get the chance. Adrian got me pregnant. 7 words. Just like that. Alina's voice cracked when she said it, and she even added a tremble to her lip, like some badly rehearsed play. And I stood there, frozen. The air stopped moving. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't respond, not because I was guilty, but because my brain refused to register that this was happening in real life. What kind of joke was this? But Tessa didn't ask me anything, didn't look for truth in my eyes. She didn't even blink. Her face twisted in pure disgust, and without hesitation, crack. Her palm collided with my cheek so violently that my head snapped sideways and the mug in my hand slipped, shattering on the tile floor. I didn't even bring my hand up to touch my face. I was too stunned, not because it hurt, but because in 1 second, the woman I had built a life with, shared secrets with, whispered to in the dark, had turned into a stranger with fire in her eyes and poison in her mouth. Tessa, I croaked, finally finding my voice. What the hell are you? But before I could finish, her brothers stormed in like they had been waiting outside the door with their sleeves rolled up. Jared and Marco, built like linebackers, always had something to prove. They didn't ask any questions either. Just grabbed me, one by each arm, and dragged me through the house like I was a stray dog tracking mud on white carpets. I was still barefoot, still wearing my old t-shirt, still trying to make sense of what the hell just happened. Get your hands off me, I muttered, but it came out too soft, too confused. They weren't listening anyway. Once we were outside, Jared punched me in the stomach without warning. Marco shoved me against the fence so hard that I saw stars. I didn't fight back. I don't know why. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have yelled, called them liars, thrown punches of my own. But I didn't. Neighbors peeked from windows. Someone across the street started filming. I caught the glint of a phone camera just as Jared spat at my feet and shouted, "You sick freak." My vision blurred, but not from pain. From shame. The kind that didn't belong to me but had been stuffed into my throat anyway. They left me there. Bruised. Humiliated. Alone. And Tessa? She didn't follow me outside. She didn't check to see if I could still stand. She just stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her wedding ring still on her hand like it meant something. Her expression was a mixture of hurt and certainty, like she had already buried me in her mind. I limped to the edge of the street. My phone buzzed over and over. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Calls I didn't answer. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. Hey, funny thing. My wife's sister accused me of something vile, and apparently I've already been tried, convicted, and sentenced before I could ask what the hell was going on. I went back inside and packed a bag. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't try to explain. What was the point? They didn't want the truth. They wanted a villain. Someone to blame. A man they could throw stones at and feel righteous for doing it. You spend your life building a home, thinking love means safety. But the truth is, people will turn on you the moment it's easier than asking hard questions. I stared at the cracked mug on the floor, then down at my trembling hands. My fingers had blood on them. From the broken ceramic or the punches, I couldn't tell. It didn't matter. I showered. I wrapped a towel around my ribs. I wrote a single line on the bathroom mirror with soap. You didn't even ask. Then I left. No screaming. No grand exit. Just a man with a bruised jaw and an empty heart walking out of the life he thought was real. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Funny thing is, you always think you'll notice the exact moment your life falls apart. Like maybe there'll be sirens or some deep internal alarm. But all it took was a lie and a slap. And that slap? It didn't just hit my face. It killed a part of me I'll never get back. They say the truth will set you free. But that's only if someone sticks around long enough to hear it. 2 days after I left, I checked my email at a small public library on the edge of town. Nothing big, just trying to access my accounts, cancel subscriptions, update passwords. But then I saw the subject line, Notice of Administrative Leave. It was from my company. I sat there in that stiff wooden chair with my hoodie pulled low and read the message 3 times. The words didn't change. Given the serious allegations circulating online, the board has decided it is in the company's best interest to initiate a separation process pending a formal investigation. What allegations? I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't spoken to a soul except for the gas station clerk and a motel owner who only cared if my card swiped. But the gossip had grown legs. I logged on to social media, something I rarely used, and there it was. A thread. No names, but enough breadcrumbs for anyone who knew us. Married man. Sister-in-law. Scandal. Pregnancy. Betrayal. Justice. Posts littered with vague accusations, quotes taken out of context, and of course, people offering opinions like they were eyewitnesses. Men like this are everywhere. He deserves to rot. Why aren't more women believed? Trash. Just trash. It was like watching my own funeral, one held on the internet, where the crowd throws stones instead of flowers. By the 3rd day, my landlord texted, "Hey, man. Sorry. Just business. But the other tenants are concerned. I'll need you to vacate by the end of the week." I stared at my phone for a long time before typing out, "No problem. I'll be gone today." And I was. I didn't argue. Didn't beg. Didn't ask for time to explain. Because I understood something now. When you're accused of something, especially as a man, especially something vile, the truth doesn't matter, not right away. People choose a side, and most of them pick the one that lets them feel good about themselves. You'd be amazed at how fast a person becomes invisible. There was a bakery down the street I used to visit every morning. The owner, a sweet older lady named Mrs. Ingram, used to hand me my coffee with a smile and say, "Back at it again, huh?" I walked in one morning like always, only to see her freeze mid-pour. She looked at me, then down at the counter, then muttered, "We're closed today." There were 3 people sitting behind me. A woman at the corner table whispered, "That's him." I walked out without saying a word. By day 5, my phone was practically useless. Tessa had blocked me. So had her mother, Eloise, and all the friends we used to invite over for wine nights and birthdays. Even people I barely knew, friends of friends, suddenly vanished from my contacts. It was like they were afraid the rumor might rub off on them just by association. I once helped Eloise move an entire patio set into her backyard during a heat wave. She called me the most dependable man in the family. Now she was on Facebook, commenting under a post about betrayal by blood, saying, "Some men are wolves in family clothing." Wolves. I wasn't even human anymore. I had kept my mouth shut after the slap, after the beating, after the shame. But reading that? It broke something small and final inside me. I wanted to scream, to fight back, to post screenshots, texts, voicemails, anything to defend myself. But I didn't have anything. Because there was nothing to prove. No secret meetings. No flirtation. No evidence. Because the thing they accused me of never happened. But proof wasn't necessary. Not when the lie was more exciting. A friend from college called me that evening. He was one of the few who hadn't ghosted me yet. "Hey man," he said, cautiously. "Look, I don't want to pry, but did you really?" I hung up before he finished. Because if someone who had known me for 10 years had to ask, then I didn't want to talk to him again. I checked into a cheap motel near the edge of the city and stared at the stained ceiling for hours, my mind spinning like a broken fan. How could a single sentence ruin a man's whole life? I thought about the moments I had given so freely, showing up early to family events, building furniture for Tessa's cousin when he moved, helping Alina install a bookshelf once while she scrolled on her phone and told me I missed a screw. Now I was a ghost in everyone's memory. A nightmare version of myself they could hate and forget without guilt. There was no court date, no trial, no report, just a story. And once it took root, it didn't need sunlight, just whispers. It wasn't about justice. It was about judgment, about moral performance, about looking like you believed women more than actually doing the work to find out what was true. And Alina, she played her part well. I heard from a friend of a friend that she was receiving sympathy gifts, people checking in, calling her brave. Her social media bio even said survivor broken heart. I wanted to throw up. Tessa didn't even text me. Not once. I checked my bank account and realized I couldn't afford to stay where I was much longer. My severance from the company was frozen, and there were whispers about possible legal action. For what? I didn't even know. And that's when the fear finally hit me. Not the fear of being hated, but the fear of being forgotten, of being no one, a name that meant nothing but shame. I looked in the mirror that night and barely recognized the man staring back. My beard had grown patchy. My eyes were dull. I looked guilty, and that terrified me. Because if I looked like that to myself, what did I look like to the world? You think rock bottom comes all at once. It doesn't. It comes slowly, layer by layer, until you realize no one is coming to save you. And if you want to survive, you'll have to become someone else entirely. I packed a small bag, sold the rest, and I bought a one-way ticket. No forwarding address. No destination that made sense. Just away. Away from the lie. From the slap. From the people who let it spread like fire while I stood in the middle, burning. When you reach the point where even your name feels like a burden, it's time to let it go. That morning, I walked into a small travel agency tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, the kind of place most people overlook. The bell above the door jingled like it hadn't been touched in years. A young woman behind the counter looked up from a crossword puzzle and asked, "Where to?" I hesitated. "Anywhere but here," I said quietly. She laughed like I was joking, but I wasn't. I didn't care where I ended up. I just needed a ticket, a direction, and a chance to disappear. By the end of the day, I was seated on a bus heading to a town I couldn't pronounce, with a fake name and a duffel bag containing everything I had left, 2 changes of clothes, a pair of boots, my old laptop, and a brown leather notebook filled with sketches, journal entries, and reminders of the man I used to be. The ride was long and quiet. I sat near the back, watching the landscapes change, city buildings giving way to dry fields, then forests, then a coastline that stretched like it had no end. Somewhere along the way, I stopped counting the hours. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat much. I just stared and thought. It's strange, the kind of silence that settles and after your life explodes. It's not peace. Not at first. It's more like a numb fog, the absence of noise that leaves room for guilt and confusion to echo louder. I kept replaying it in my head. The slap. The lie. The way everyone turned away so fast, like they'd been waiting for a reason to hate me. I wondered if there was something in me they'd all seen long before I did. Was I too quiet? Too helpful? Too easy to forget? That last thought lingered more than the rest. Easy to forget. By the time I reached my destination, the fog outside had thickened, and the bus was one of only 2 vehicles on a narrow coastal road. The driver pulled into a gravel lot and said, "Last stop." That was fine by me. The place was small. Remote. No cell towers. Just wooden buildings that looked like they hadn't been painted since the 80s, a harbor with old boats tethered like sleeping dogs, and an inn that doubled as a diner. I walked through the town, duffel bag over my shoulder, and tried not to draw attention. A man with a cigarette hanging from his lips sat on a porch, fixing a net. He watched me walk by and nodded. I nodded back. I asked the innkeeper if they rented rooms weekly. She looked me up and down, then said, "Cash only." I paid her for the first 2 weeks and asked if she knew anyone looking for help. Depends what kind of help, she said. Anything that keeps me moving, I replied. She pointed across the harbor. Try the dock. Old man named Ben. Hires folks to clean his gear. Ben didn't ask questions. Just handed me gloves and pointed to a stack of fishing nets that smelled like rot and salt. I got to work, and for the first time in weeks, nobody whispered, nobody stared, nobody judged. I was just a man with gloves and a task. I worked until my back screamed and my hands went raw. Then I walked back to my room, collapsed on the thin mattress, and stared at the ceiling until sleep dragged me under. That was my new routine. Wake, work, Washington sleep. No internet, no headlines, no updates, just fog, salt, sweat, and silence. And for a while, that was enough. I didn't tell anyone my real name. I went by Miles. It felt cleaner, simpler, detached. I didn't bring up my past, and no one asked. Some nights, I'd walk the shoreline, breathing in the cold air and letting the wind numb my face. Other nights, I wrote in my notebook. Not full entries, just fragments. A thought, a sentence, a single word sometimes. I didn't want to remember. I wanted to rebuild. In town, people started recognizing me, not in the way they used to. No pity, no whispers. Just simple greetings. Morning, Miles. You working the West Dock today? You take coffee with sugar or cream? They didn't want my story, just my presence. And that was new. The more I kept to myself, the more space I found in my own head. I started running every morning. First a few minutes, then half an hour, then 5 miles at a time. The pain felt good. It made sense. My lungs burned, my legs shook, but it was a pain I chose. A struggle with purpose. After a few months, I started fixing broken things around town, gutters, sheds, boats. A woman named June asked if I could help her update her business website. I told her I wasn't much of a tech guy, but she insisted. I borrowed a laptop from the library, watched tutorials, read forums, and figured it out. Then another shopkeeper asked for help. Then another. I didn't realize it then, but something had shifted. I was still invisible, but this time by choice. I was no longer Adrian, the accused. I was Miles, the man with tools and time and no past to drag behind him. One night, I stood on the dock after work, watching the boat sway under a deep blue sky. The stars were just beginning to peek out, and the water reflected them like a secret mirror. I thought about Tessa, about her face when she believed the worst of me without hesitation. I wondered if she missed me, if she regretted it. But then I pushed the thought away, because it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this moment, this stillness, this new version of me slowly being built from the wreckage of who I used to be. No headlines, no group chats, no slaps, no screams, just fog, salt, silence, and the slow, deliberate process of becoming someone no one could erase. The name Miles wasn't just a disguise anymore. It became something else entirely. Not a cover, but a beginning. I didn't choose it for any deep reason at first. It was just the name printed on the back of an old work shirt I found in a donation bin by the pier. Faded letters. Blue cotton. Someone had stitched it there long before me, and when the townspeople started calling me by it, I never corrected them. Funny how identity can grow out of scraps. By the end of my first year in that fog-wrapped harbor town, I wasn't just surviving. I was slowly, carefully living again. Ben, the grumpy old fisherman who first gave me work, had a stroke that winter. His daughter, Clara, came back to help him recover. She was tough, practical, and didn't smile much, which suited me fine. One evening, as we closed the nest shed, she said, "You're good with numbers, right?" I shrugged. "Decent." She tossed a salt-stained notebook onto the table. "Try making sense of that." Ben's inventory was a mess, half handwritten, half remembered. I stayed up that night reworking his books, organizing receipts, and sorting out which of the fishing permits had expired. The next morning, I handed Clara a neat spreadsheet and a simple digital ledger. Her eyes widened. "You did this in one night?" I nodded. She stared at the screen. "You ever thought of doing more than just scrubbing nets?" The truth was I had. Quietly. Secretly. In the shadows of the nights I didn't sleep. Coding had always been an interest of mine, but I never needed to rely on it back then. In my past life, I'd been too busy being the dependable husband, the son-in-law who fixed gutters, the employee who kept things running but never raised his hand. But here, I had time. Time to build something that was mine. That night, I registered a domain, amreefsketch.com. Not my real name, not entirely. Just enough to honor the initials I left behind and the man I was trying to become. I started small, building websites for local businesses. The flower shop, a cafe, a boat rental company. Clients didn't see my face. They didn't ask questions. They just liked the results. As money trickled in, I rented a small workshop near the edge of town, one with old floorboards and dusty windows. I bought a second-hand computer, a folding desk, a kettle, and a fan heater. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every screw I turned into the wall reminded me I was still here, still capable, still building. Somehow, without planning to, I became the unofficial tech guy for the whole coastal strip. Word spread. A man from 2 towns over showed up one day, needing help launching an online store for his handmade furniture. A retired teacher wanted to start a blog. A young mother wanted to build a recipe site. I never said no. I charged fair, not cheap. People paid on time. They brought me coffee, bread, stories, and they never asked, "Where are you from?" I didn't know if they were being polite or if they'd simply accepted that I was one of them now. The business grew quietly. I created a separate. I even sponsored a small local race and printed AM Reeves Tech on the back of the participants' bibs. One day, I found myself standing at the front of a town council meeting, showing them a new digital system I built to help track public repairs. Me, Adrian Miles, formerly erased, now being applauded in a room full of strangers who knew nothing of the scandal that once buried me alive. I left that meeting and walked to the edge of the harbor just as the sun dipped behind the cliffs. The water glowed like melted gold. I took off my shoes and stood in the sand, letting the tide touch my toes. And I cried, not out of sadness, out of disbelief. Because I had done what I thought was impossible, I built a version of myself no one could accuse, twist, or destroy. A man with no past, just a present he was finally allowed to own. But with every step forward came a whisper of the past. Sometimes I dream of that day. The slap, the look on Tessa's face, the way her brothers dragged me out like trash. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, half expecting to find a notice under my door or a mob outside with torches made of memories. But no one came. The truth is, people don't chase ghosts. And that's what I had become, by choice. Still, I kept my secrets close. The notebook I once used to scribble pain had become something else. Now it held plans, wireframes, checklists, and inside its back cover, taped with aging black tape, was a tiny USB drive. One I carried everywhere. It held the recording I had received 6 months after vanishing, forwarded by a mutual acquaintance who didn't know the weight of what they were passing along. Alina's voice, laughing, mocking, confessing. I told them he did it because I hated how perfect they thought he was. He looked at me like I was nothing, so I made him into nothing. I had listened to it exactly once. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened. Then I backed it up, locked it away, kept it close. Not for revenge, but as proof that I hadn't imagined it. That the world really had twisted sideways for no reason other than one jealous woman's lie. It was strange how healing doesn't look like how you imagine it. I didn't stand on a mountain and scream into the wind. I didn't punch walls or write angry letters. I just kept building. One site, one system, one quiet success at a time. I hired 2 locals to help with the overflow. Paid them well. Gave them flexible hours. When people asked me what motivated me, I said, I know what it feels like to have your life ripped away. So I'm trying to build one no one can take. That was the only truth I ever told them. Sometimes, I'd catch a stranger's voice that sounded like Tessa's. Or I'd hear the name, Alina, and freeze for a second. But the town moved on, and so did I. Every wire I fixed. Every boat I helped digitize. Every broken login I restored. It was a piece of me coming back. Not the old me. A new man. A man with nothing to prove to anyone but himself. A man named Miles. And this time, the only thing I answered to was my own reflection. I remember the sound before anything else. It wasn't a regular knock. It was frantic. Desperate. Like someone slamming their fists against a wall after realizing the door might be the only way out of drowning. My hands froze on the keyboard. I was mid-email to a client in Zurich, negotiating final terms on a long-term systems upgrade. The cursor blinked, waiting on my thoughts, but I had already stood up. I glanced out the window. Rain came down in sheets. Thick, wild, slashing sideways in the kind of storm that turned streets into rivers. Wind howled like it was mourning something. Thunder cracked overhead as I stepped cautiously toward the front door. 3 more bangs. A voice, muffled, but familiar. My hand paused on the doorknob, and then I heard it. The name I hadn't heard in over 3 years. Adrian, please. The voice broke on the second syllable, a soft crumble under pressure. It didn't sound like it used to. It was tired, raw, but still, unmistakably hers. Tessa. I opened the door slowly, not because I was unsure, but because I didn't know what would be standing on the other side. I'd imagined this moment, truth be told. Not often, but enough to recognize how much of my healing still hinged on the ghost of her walking through my past. She stood there soaked through, hair plastered to her face, eyes wide with something between guilt and grief. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was holding herself together from the inside out. Please, I know you're in there, she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't answer. I didn't move. We just stood there, staring at each other while the storm raged around us. I thought about how small she looked. How once I would have rushed to pull her inside, dry her hair, wrap her in a blanket. But that man, the one who used to protect her from everything, he wasn't home. She reached out, touched the doorframe like it might anchor her. I've been looking for you, she said. For years. I raised an eyebrow, not because I was surprised, but because I didn't trust anything that started with that sentence. I stepped aside. She hesitated, then walked in like someone returning to a house that once held their name but no longer remembered their scent. The room was warm, clean, minimal. I lived simple now. A couch, a desk, a few framed photos of sunrises I'd taken during my runs. Nothing that tied me to anyone but myself. She stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, dripping rainwater onto the wooden floor. How did you find me? I asked flatly. She looked away. It took time. A lot of dead ends. I had to hire someone. When I found out the truth, I needed to. I had to try. I watched her carefully. The truth, I repeated, testing the weight of her words. She nodded, tears starting to form but still refusing to fall. I didn't come to argue. I needed you to see me. I needed to explain. I walked to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a small USB drive, the same one I carried like a secret badge of survival. The proof I'd never used. The file I'd never needed to show anyone. Until now. I already know everything, I said quietly, handing her the drive. She stared at it like it might burn her. What is it? She asked, though I think part of her already knew. Take it. Go play it. If you still want to talk after that, come back tomorrow. She didn't move at first. Didn't blink. Then she took it with trembling fingers and nodded. I walked back to the desk, sat down, returned my attention to the screen. And just like that, she was gone. I listened to the door close, to the sound of her shoes sloshing away in the rain, to the wind pressing against the windows like it wanted to get in too. Then silence. For hours, I sat in that silence. I didn't check my phone, didn't look at the clock, just stared out the window as the storm faded into a soft drizzle. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the lives I'd lived in the years since that slap. Since her brothers beat me bloody. Since her silence became louder than the lie itself. What did she expect to find here? A man waiting? A heart that stayed soft? A soul that still had a welcome mat laid out? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I wasn't her husband anymore. Not legally. Not emotionally. Not spiritually. The next morning came wrapped in fog, thick and pale like the town itself wanted to hide me from the day ahead. I didn't go out. I didn't check email. I sat by the window with a mug of black coffee, waiting for nothing and expecting less. Until I saw her. She didn't knock this time. She sat on the porch bench, head bowed, hands clasped in her lap like a child awaiting punishment. She looked up when she saw me. Her face was different. Something had shifted. The tears were gone, but so was the fight. Only the ache remained. I stepped outside. She stood. I played it, she said. I nodded. She swallowed hard. I destroyed you. I said nothing. Adrian. I didn't know. I didn't ask. I just believed her. I raised a hand. You don't have to say it. She blinked fast, like her body was trying to hold back the flood she hadn't earned the right to release. Do you hate me? She asked, voice cracking. I looked out over the sea. The waves were calm now. Slow. No, I said. Hate takes energy. I don't have anything left to give you. She collapsed to her knees. I didn't reach out. Didn't move. I just walked past her. I had a client meeting in 20 minutes. One of the biggest contracts I'd ever landed. Because life had moved on. And so had I. She came back again the next day. This time, she didn't knock. She just stood across the road, watching the front of my workshop as if trying to gather the courage to step inside. I saw her through the blinds while I was updating a cybersecurity patch for a client's database. I kept typing, kept working, because her presence didn't unnerve me anymore. It didn't stir anything, not rage, not longing, just curiosity, like watching a storm pass over a mountain you've already climbed. When she finally stepped in, the bell above the door chimed softly. "You're busy," she said. "I'm always busy," I replied, not looking up. She stepped further in and closed the door behind her. The air smelled like ocean mist and rain-soaked fabric. She still wore the same coat from the day before, and her voice was smaller somehow, like the years away had drained her confidence along with the color from her cheeks. "I didn't sleep," she said quietly. I gave her nothing in return. No words. No sympathy. Just the sound of fingers on keys and the subtle hum of the office heater. She walked to the edge of my desk and waited until I looked up. "I need to say something," she said. I leaned back and gave her a single nod. "I didn't know she recorded it," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "Alina, I never thought she'd admit it." "But she did," I said. "Yes," Tessa answered, the word catching in her throat. "I knew 2 years ago," I told her calmly. That made her blink. "What?" "I knew. 2 years ago. About the lie. About the recording. About everything." She stumbled a step back like I'd slapped her with the very silence she once weaponized against me. "But you never said anything." "No," I said. "I didn't." "Why?" she asked, genuinely stunned. "Because the truth wouldn't have changed what you did," I replied. "It wouldn't undo the slap. It wouldn't erase your brothers dragging me across the lawn like a criminal. It wouldn't fix the weeks I spent hiding from a world that spat on me over something I didn't do." So I stayed quiet. I wanted to see what mattered more to you, my silence or your guilt. She covered her mouth like she might be sick. I could see her legs shaking. "I would have come sooner if I had known." "But you didn't want to know," I cut in. "That's the part you keep skipping. You didn't ask. You didn't doubt. You didn't even flinch. You chose her over me before I could speak." She sat down in the chair across from me, shoulders hunched, face pale. "She cried, Adrian," she said. "Alina cried. And she said you looked at her with hate. That you cornered her. That she didn't know how to say no." I narrowed my eyes. "And that was enough for you to decide I deserved to be ruined?" I was scared, she snapped suddenly. I didn't know what to believe, and the way she said it, she sounded so broken. "So did I said coldly. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "You didn't come back for the truth," I said. "You came back because you lost everything else." She flinched at that. It landed. I leaned forward, my voice even. "I know about your divorce. I know your family turned on you. I know your mother called it an old scandal and told you to get over it. I know Jared got exposed for that thing at the school and Marco's business folded. I know because I stayed quiet. And while I stayed quiet, the truth had time to grow legs of its own." Her mouth trembled, but she said nothing. "You didn't come back because of regret," I continued. "You came back because you needed something to feel clean again." "No," she said quietly. "That's not true." "It is," I said. "And that's okay. I'm not mad about it. I'm just not giving you what you came here for." She looked confused. "What do you think I came here for?" "Redemption," I said. "Closure. Maybe even forgiveness." I paused, let the silence thicken between us. "But what you don't realize is, I forgave you a long time ago. Not for your sake. For mine. I had to. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. But forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It doesn't mean welcome. It just means I stopped carrying your actions like they were mine." Tessa's shoulders shook as she covered her face with her hands. For a moment, she just sat there and let herself break in front of me. No mascara. No crowd. No performance. Just a woman buried under the rubble of her own decisions. When she finally looked at me again, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Do you think we could ever fix this?" I tilted my head, not angry, just honest. "No," I said. She nodded slowly. "I understand," she whispered. "I deserve that. No one deserves to be lied about like I was," I said. "But people make mistakes. The problem is, you made yours and let me pay for it alone." We sat there for another minute. No more words, just breath and space and all the invisible things that had lived between us for too long. She finally stood, straightened her coat. "I'll go now," she said. I nodded. "Take care of yourself." She opened the door and looked back one last time. I hope you find happiness, she said. I already have, I replied. And I meant it. She left. No begging. No more promises. No more twisted stories. Just the truth. And silence. And the man who had survived both. I don't know how long she stood there on my porch the next day, but when I finally stepped outside, she was already sitting on the bench, back straight, hands clenched in her lap, like a child waiting for judgment. She didn't look at me at first, just kept her eyes on the gravel path leading from my steps to the road. I stood there in the doorway, the morning air still cool from the night's mist. Birds chirped overhead. The town was just beginning to stir, early joggers, a couple of dock workers shouting greetings across the water. But all I could hear was the silence between us. That old, familiar silence that once meant comfort and now just stretched tight like a wire between two cliffs. She looked up, finally, and there was something gone from her eyes. Pride. Maybe hope. Maybe the last piece of the story she had tried to hold together in her mind. I listened to it, she said. I didn't respond. I listened to her voice again and again. It didn't sound like her. And that's what scared me the most. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. Not this time. It wasn't the version of Alina I knew. Or maybe it was the only real version, and I never wanted to see it. I stepped onto the porch but didn't sit. I didn't owe her comfort. I just owed myself closure. She was laughing, Tessa said quietly, staring at the wooden floor beneath her feet. Just laughing. Like she'd pulled off the cleverest trick in the world. I nodded slowly. Because to her, that's what it was. She finally looked at me then. And her face, God, her face, it carried years. Years of denial, of swallowing a lie so deep it became part of her. And now, that lie was gone, surgically cut away by truth. And all that was left was scar tissue. She said she did it because you looked at her like she was nothing. She was mad that I never wanted her attention. I said, simply. She mistook basic decency for rejection. She wanted to punish me for not being what she needed to feel special. Tessa closed her eyes. She hated me, too. You know, she said. I think that's what I didn't want to believe. That it wasn't just about you. It was about both of us. What we had. What we represented to her. Possibly, I said. But that doesn't change what she did, or what you did after. She flinched, and I saw her chest rise as she took a slow breath. I keep wondering, she whispered. If she had never confessed, if that recording never existed, would I have ever seen it? Would I have kept living with the version of you in my head that she painted? The one I helped make real. That was the question, wasn't it? And I could tell from the way she said it. She already knew the answer. You came back because the illusion collapsed, I said. Not because you were searching for the truth. You just didn't have anything left to hold on to. She didn't argue. I remember, she said, her voice a little stronger now, the day it all happened. I keep playing it back in my mind. You were holding coffee. You looked calm. Confused. But I didn't see that then. I just saw a problem I needed to solve. And you were the problem. I looked out toward the dock. The water glistened under the rising sun. There's something people don't understand about betrayal, I said slowly. It's not just the lie. It's not even the slap. It's the speed. How quickly someone decides you're guilty. How fast they throw away everything you ever were to them. That's what breaks you. She nodded, tears silently sliding down her cheeks now. She didn't wipe them away. I ruined you, she said again, barely audible. I didn't correct her. I didn't soothe her. Because sometimes, people need to sit in the mess they made. I told myself for so long that maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt, she continued. That maybe it was just a mistake. But hearing her voice, mocking, so proud of what she did, it shattered everything I built to protect myself. She stood now, slowly, like the weight of her confession pressed on every joint. I'm not here to fix anything, she said. I know that's not possible. I'm not here for your forgiveness, either. I don't deserve it. I just needed to look you in the eye after hearing that recording. Because I needed you to see that I know now. I looked at her. Really looked. And what I saw wasn't the woman I used to love. Not the wife who used to laugh at my bad cooking or sneak her cold feet under my legs at night. That woman died the same day the lie was born. This woman was a stranger who had walked through fire, she said herself, and she came out burned. But maybe, finally, honest. There's nothing left to rebuild, I said. She nodded. I know. She stepped off the porch and turned back once. For what it's worth. I hope the life you built now gives you peace. Because you deserve it, Adrian. I let her name hang in the air a moment before I responded. It does, I said simply. And then I walked back inside and closed the door behind me. Not angrily. Not bitterly. Just, finally. There would be no rekindled love. No dramatic apologies. No hugs in the rain. What the tape revealed wasn't just Alina's lie. It revealed what had always been there between us. Doubt. Distance. The kind of love that collapses under the first strike because it was never strong enough to survive honesty. And I had survived it. Without her. Without all of them. Because sometimes, the only way to reclaim your name is to stop asking others to spell it right. I thought that after the tape, after the final confrontation, that would be the last I'd see of her. I figured she'd return to whatever scraps were left of her old life, vanish back into the mess she helped create, and that would be it. But Tessa didn't leave. She stayed. Not in my home, not even on my street, but in the town. She rented a small. First from the innkeeper who helped her settle in, then from Clara at the net shed, who saw her buying groceries with shaky hands. I didn't go looking. I didn't ask why she stayed. I didn't care to. But I noticed. She didn't walk around with her head held high. There was no arrogance. Just stillness. Like someone trying not to disturb the air. She volunteered at the town clinic, helped clean up the beach after storms, started tutoring kids after school. I watched from a distance. Not because I was curious about her redemption arc, but because part of me was trying to understand why I wasn't angry anymore. She didn't ask to be near me. She didn't knock again. She just showed up in the world I had built. Carefully, quietly, like she knew she was stepping through something fragile and sacred that didn't belong to her. At first, the locals didn't know who she was to me, and she didn't tell them. But small towns have long memories and even longer whispers. A few people connected the dots. A few came to me privately, asking, "You all right with this?" I always gave the same answer. "She's not mine to chase off. She's just here." They nodded. And that was that. One afternoon, I saw her at the farmer's market. She was holding a bag of apples, laughing softly with one of the older women who sold honey. The sun caught her hair, and for a second, the memory of who she used to be flickered in my mind. Then it passed. She saw me, and instead of waving or smiling, she just nodded. I nodded back. That was the new language between us. No words. No open wounds. Just acknowledgement. Like two travelers who once shared a path but now moved in opposite directions. Weeks passed. Then months. She became part of the town in the same way I had. By earning it. Not asking for anything. Just doing the work. People asked less about her and more about my business again. Clients grew. I hired a third developer. Bought better equipment. I even started giving talks at the local college about digital identity and online resilience. I never spoke about my past, but every word I shared came from it. And yet, in the quiet of my evenings, I couldn't shake the ache of one question. Would she have come if Alina had never confessed? The answer always sat like a stone in my stomach. No, she wouldn't have. Her return wasn't born from faith. It was born from fallout. And forgiveness, as people love to preach, doesn't fix that. I could forgive her for being human, for being gullible, for making a choice under pressure. But I couldn't forget that when everything crumbled, she let me fall first. She chose to believe a lie over the man who held her during her worst nights. The man who took care of her mother when she broke her hip. The man who used to trace maps on her back with his fingers and plan dreams with his eyes closed. I didn't hate her anymore, but I didn't trust her either. And trust. That was the thing forgiveness couldn't rebuild. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the lighthouse, she approached me while I was locking up the workshop. The sky was bruised purple, waves licking the dock gently. "Do you mind?" she asked, gesturing to the wooden bench near the stairs. I shrugged. "It's a public bench." She sat beside me, not too close. "I'm not trying to win you back," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to say thank you." That caught me off guard. For what? For not telling everyone who I was. For letting me exist here without dragging your story behind me like chains. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the difference between apology and accountability. She wasn't here to be forgiven. She was here to carry the weight she should have carried long ago. "I didn't keep it quiet for you," I said. "I did it because I needed peace. And retelling the worst parts of my life to strangers doesn't bring that." She nodded. "I never asked you that day. When I slapped you. When it all started." She hesitated, searching for words. "What were you going to say? Before everything went sideways?" I stared out at the water. I was going to ask what the hell she was talking about, I said. Because it was so out of left field, I thought it had to be a joke. I was stunned. That's all. I didn't even get a chance to defend myself. Tessa looked away, ashamed. And instead of asking me one question, I continued, "You hit me. You let them drag me outside. You let it happen." "I know," she whispered. "And you've got to live with that," I said. "Not because I want you to suffer, but because that's the consequence. That's the echo of choices we don't get to undo." "I do live with it," she said. "Every day." We sat in silence again. And then, as the sky darkened, she stood. "This will be the last time I talk to you directly," she said. "I needed to say those things. But I'll respect the space you've created. I won't interfere." I nodded. And as she turned to walk away, I said one last thing. "You're doing good work at the clinic." She stopped, turned slightly, and smiled. "Thank you." Then she walked into the evening haze and didn't look back. And I sat on the bench, listening to the wind, the tide, the creak of the dock. I thought about everything we'd been through, the lies, the fall, the return, and I realized something important. Closure doesn't come with grand apologies or neatly tied endings. It comes in pieces, in nods across markets, in shared silence, in distance maintained not from anger, but from knowing better. Forgiveness can clear the air, but it doesn't rebuild bridges. And sometimes, peace is just knowing you don't have to try anymore. I never wanted revenge. Not really. It's a messy word, bloated with bitterness, dripping with energy I no longer had to give. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I didn't want to make them hurt the way I had. I just wanted the truth to live. So, I let it. It started on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The fog had rolled in thick over the docks, swallowing the horizon in a soft gray hush. I was at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling through a forum on small business cybersecurity, when I saw a trending story on one of the discussion boards. False accusation ruins man's life until truth surfaces. I clicked it out of habit. But what I saw wasn't a coincidence. It was my story, posted anonymously. No names, no photos, just details, frighteningly accurate ones, about a man accused by his sister-in-law of getting her pregnant, betrayed by his wife and family, beaten, fired, ostracized, only to vanish, start again, and later discover the entire accusation was a lie. And attached at the bottom? An audio file. Alina's voice. Her smug confession. I told them he did it because I hated how perfect they thought he was. He looked at me like I was nothing. So I made him into nothing. Word for word. The same file I had tucked away for over 2 years. I didn't upload it. But I knew who did. Tessa. She must have copied it after I gave her the original. Maybe it was her version of setting things right. Or maybe she couldn't carry the weight alone anymore. Either way, the internet had it now. And there was no putting it back in the box. Within hours, the story spread. Blogs picked it up. Forums dissected it. People debated in the comments whether it was real or fake. But it didn't matter. The voice was real. The confession was real. And soon, people started connecting dots. It didn't take long. The whispers returned, but this time, not around me. This time, they wrapped around the people who once buried me. Alina's job at a mid-sized PR firm? Gone. Their CEO issued a public statement. "We do not tolerate any behavior that undermines the dignity of others." She vanished from social media within a week. Jared, Tessa's brother and former high school football coach, resigned after an anonymous complaint referenced past involvement in physical violence based on unproven accusations. Someone leaked the video of him dragging me outside by my collar. It resurfaced like a curse. Their mother, Eloise? She sat on the board of a local charity that supported women's shelters. When the board found out about her public comments, "Some men are wolves in family clothing," made before any investigation, she was asked to step down. They never saw a courtroom, but they faced a judgment far worse. The court of public truth. No lawyers, no gavels, just reflection in the mirror of a world that had moved on without them and didn't want them back. And me? I stayed quiet. I didn't confirm, didn't deny. I didn't gloat or add fuel. I just kept living, kept working, kept building the life they thought they could ruin. People in town began approaching me differently, not out of pity, but with respect. I read something online. One man said at the marina. Didn't mention names. But if it's even half true. "I'm sorry for what you went through." I nodded. That was all I needed. Another woman at the cafe placed a croissant and coffee on my table and said, "On the house." Life didn't change drastically, but it felt lighter. like I was walking with the wind at my back instead of against it. Tessa didn't speak to me during this time, but I saw her. She kept her head down, kept working at the clinic, kept living quietly. I could only imagine what it felt like for her to watch her family unravel under the weight of the truth they once ignored. She had set the fire, but she hadn't walked away. She stood in the ashes, let the smoke sting her eyes, and didn't ask for sympathy. In some small, silent way, I respected that. One morning, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. No handwriting. Just typed words on clean white paper. You didn't have to do it that way, but you did. You let the truth breathe instead of turning it into a weapon. I don't deserve your kindness, but thank you for not destroying us when you had every right to. I see that now. T. I folded the paper and placed it in a drawer with the others. Not because I needed to read it again, but because I wanted to remember that sometimes justice doesn't come with fire. Sometimes it comes with quiet, undeniable truth. And sometimes that's enough. People often think justice is loud, that it needs a stage, a verdict, an audience on their feet. But what I learned in those weeks was this: justice can be a whisper, a post online, a recording set free, a simple nod from someone who once doubted you. Justice doesn't always punish. Sometimes it just reveals. And once revealed, people can no longer look away. They have to live with what they see. That's what happened to Alina, to Eloise, to Jared. They weren't jailed. They weren't fined. But the world saw them. The truth saw them. And more importantly, they saw themselves. One evening, just before closing time, a teenager walked into my workshop. Looked about 17. Nervous. Shifting on his feet. "You the guy who built the Truth blog?" he asked. I frowned. "What?" He stammered. "That story online. About the lie. And how the guy disappeared but came back stronger. That's you, right?" I didn't answer. But I didn't need to. He nodded slowly. "I just wanted to say, that story helped me. A lot. I almost gave up on myself this year. People thought I did something I didn't do. I started to believe it too." He pulled something from his backpack, a sketch pad. "My teacher told me to draw something that made me feel strong again. I drew this." He showed me a page. A faceless man standing in a storm, lightning behind him, feet planted firm. The caption read, "Truth doesn't flinch." I stared at it for a long time. Then I stood, shook his hand, and said, "You hold on to that strength. Don't let them rewrite you." He left with a smile. And I sat down behind my desk, a strange calm washing over me. It hit me then. Why I had never posted the recording myself. Why I had waited. Why I had rebuilt first. Because justice isn't just about them knowing what they did. It's about you knowing who you are, no matter what they said. There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who are made by what happens to them, and those who choose who they become after. I used to think I was the first. Back then, I moved through life trying to be good, reliable, useful. I thought that if I loved hard enough, gave enough, forgave fast enough, the people around me would see me. They'd stand by me. But when the storm came, they didn't hold on. They let go. And I fell. But the thing about falling is, sometimes you land on something solid. Yourself. These days, I still wake early. Not because I'm haunted anymore, but because I like the quiet before the town stirs. I brew my coffee slowly. Watch the morning fog roll over the harbor. I don't check my phone right away. I don't scroll through headlines or chase news. I sit, breathe, and remind myself that peace doesn't come in breaking headlines. It comes in the absence of needing to be seen. I walk into town most mornings. Not because I have to, but because I can. People greet me now. The kind of greetings that come without caution, without judgment. It took years, but I earned that. Not by proving my innocence. Not by screaming my side of the story. But by living in a way that made the lie irrelevant. I pass the clinic sometimes, and I see Tessa through the glass. She's usually bent over a clipboard or tending to one of the kids from town. Sometimes our eyes meet. And when they do, we both nod. No more. No less. She kept her promise. She never crossed the line again. Never came to speak. Never tried to make it something it wasn't. And I respected her more for that than any apology she could have given. I know her family's scattered now. Alina moved to another city, changed her name online, tried to reinvent herself. But you can't outrun your reflection. Not forever. Jared teaches part-time somewhere, last I heard. Eloise spends most of her days traveling, maybe to find places where no one recognizes her face. And me? I stayed. I built. I own 3 buildings in town now. Rented one to a couple starting a podcast studio, another to a marine gear supplier. My tech business runs almost entirely online these days, with clients across 6 countries and growing. I never marketed myself heavily. I didn't need to. The work speaks, just like the truth did. But here's the part no one teaches you when your life burns to the ground. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with banners or thunder or applause. Healing is quiet, subtle. It happens in ordinary moments. Sipping tea while coding, picking out a new chair for the office, helping a stranger carry boxes up the stairs. One afternoon, about a year after the story broke online, a local school reached out. They were organizing a youth program on digital ethics and resilience. They asked me if I'd speak, not because they knew my story, but because they'd seen the life I'd built and thought it might inspire the kids. I said yes. When I walked into that room, a dozen young faces looked up at me. Some were eager. Some were bored. A few just curious. I told them my journey, sanitized, of course. I didn't speak about betrayal or slander. I spoke about starting over, about losing everything and choosing to learn instead of collapse. One boy asked, "How do you stop being angry at the people who ruined your life?" I smiled. "You don't," I said. "You just stop giving them rent in your head. You stop carrying their actions like they're part of your identity. You outgrow their power over you by building a life so full they can't squeeze into it." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe one day, those words will matter to him. That night, I stood on my porch with a cup of warm cider and stared at the sky. No clouds, just stars. 1,000 quiet lights blinking above me, indifferent to everything below. I thought about the man I used to be. The one who stood stunned in his kitchen, coffee cup in hand, watching his life collapse because of a sentence someone else invented. I didn't recognize him anymore. He was too soft. Too eager to please, too ready to believe love was something owed rather than something earned. And now? Now I am deliberate. With my time. With my trust. With my silence. Tessa once asked me, months ago, before she finally let go completely, "Do you think we could ever find a way back?" I didn't answer then. I just looked at her. But if she asked me now, I'd say this. That man you were married to, he's gone. He died the moment you slapped him without asking a single question. The man who stands here now? He doesn't belong to your story anymore. He wrote a new one. People assume survival is the end. But survival is just the beginning. Because once you realize you can survive being erased, you start to wonder what you could become if you stopped trying to be acceptable and started being true. True to yourself. To your own voice. To your own worth. I don't live for validation anymore. I live for the version of me that I almost lost. The one who picked up the pieces in the dark and learned how to shape them into something new. My name is Adrian Miles. I was accused, beaten, erased, abandoned, but I didn't stay buried. I came back, not to prove a point, not to seek revenge, but to choose who I wanted to be without anyone else's permission. And this time, the only name I answered to is mine, fully, proudly, without apology.